All right, guys. How you doing? Welcome back to Black Bear News, where everything is connected. Early chatters are in, and thankfully, they always are. How y'all doing? Judy Truitt, you got 4 inches of snow yesterday and 10 degrees last night. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We're not that cold here, but definitely feeling the wintry gusts. And we're should have already gotten a storm, due to get a storm next couple days. Hello, Rockfin. ROKFIN, please come hang out with me on Rockfin. Urban Hermit is hanging out with me on Rockfin. I remember to click the free button, so come watch me for free on Rockfin. No ads. No ads. Nazmanab says Despacito has 7.1 billion views. Yeah, because that's what's important. That's what really gets humanity going, right? A little Despacito. Maybe once in a while, people might wander over and watch a video, about people knowing stuff. Whatever. Looks that way. Rich Diana asks, are you getting an atmospheric river condition soon? Yeah, looks that way. That seems to be what is setting up. Is atmospheric river, Pineapple Express, whatever you want to call it. Hopefully, guys, my stream stays pretty steady today. I'm running some different stuff on my computer, and I'm crossing my fingers that it doesn't really interfere with what's going on, but it seems like everything is good. So let's get into it, because we don't have a lot of time. But before we get into it, guys, I'm setting my course on a new adventure. It's kind of like the Love Boat. I have another channel called Neo-Realism that I just started like 2 days ago. And today I'm going to do my first live stream at noon. So 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you guys please come over, it's politics. We are talking politics, current events. I'm a political junkie. I like to talk politics. I understand that people on this channel don't necessarily want to talk politics all the time, that we want to talk about climate change, and that's fine. We're going to continue talking about climate change every day at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And we're not doing that either. Anyways, so here's the link, and I'll post it again at the end of the show. Here's the link. Hopefully it'll get in there. There's a link to my new channel called Neo-Realism. And we're talking politics. So if you want to come hang out and talk politics and current events with me, come do that at noon. Astro Master. Yeah, I actually watched... I watched like the press conference just with John Kerry about climate change just a couple of minutes ago. And I have to say, okay, I don't really, I'm 50-50 on whether something substantial will really get done. And as the press conference went on, I was filled with dismay, a little more dismay, but what I was encouraged about is that, they were openly talking about climate change as if it was a problem, right? So that was a pleasant switch up from the Trump era. And Basil Peterson, that's the surprise. The surprise is I have a new channel. If you want to talk politics, come talk politics with me. Of course, you can't really talk politics without talking climate change, but I just, I just like to blab on about what's happening in current affairs and whatnot. I'm a junkie, political junkie, so I like to talk about it, but I know that not everybody here necessarily enjoys talking about it, so, it's all good. Yeah, so anyways, the press conference about climate change, I was like, cool. Then John Kerry starts talking about, well, it's going to mean a lot of jobs. Then it was just like jobs, the economy. So all of this is like, well, we're going to get this whole green new technology economy going. And then I was like, that's what it's all about. Raza asks, can I come on the new channel and be subversive? I don't know. I don't know what that means. I'm just saying, I'm not going to, whatever. Come check it out. If you don't like it, you don't like it. If you like it, cool. Hang out. Yes, human love solidarity need a Ponzi scheme to make peace profitable. And Jay Thadcast, sounds like the fun politics of green growth. Yeah, and that's what it sounded like to me, and I was just kind of like, oh, okay. It was kind of all about capitalism. Kiro Hikes, the link does not go to the studio. That link goes to my the channel, as far as I know. I'm sorry, I can't help you with much more than that, but it goes to the channel. It doesn't work for you. Hold on, let me check it out. Ooh, weird. Well, okay, look up neo-realism. Just look in capital letters. There's going to be a blue N. Just search it, guys. I can't really give you a link right now. Hold on, maybe I can. I promise not to spend more than 1 minute on this. But it's a brand new channel, so I don't, maybe it's not showing up anywhere. Oh, it's really not showing up anywhere. Hold on. Yeah. Oh, that really sucks. Hold on. Anybody having any luck searching it? Human love solidarity, did you get it? Or no? Yeah, Kiro Hikes, I can't post on recommended channels on my channel because it's so new that it's not showing up in any searches. So, oh, here's how you find it. Go on my Twitter. See my Twitter right here on my screen. Go to my Twitter. There is a link on my Twitter page for the channel. Just go there. Violent Hippie says, hold on. Are you, Violent Hippie, are you talking to me? Or are you talking to somebody else? I don't know. I can't really tell. No, it's not under my name. It's brand. I don't know. It's brand. I have to say quickly, because I'm not going to spend any more time talking about this, but I have to say very quickly, starting a new YouTube channel in this day and age is a very dicey proposition. Because Roger Hallam started a YouTube channel, and he had like 200 subscribers for the first couple months. So, okay, go to my Twitter page, and you can find the link. If you don't have Twitter, we'll find it. We'll find it. Oh, the entire link was not sent to you. Is that what it is? Is that what it is? Okay, thanks, Astro. Here, maybe this will work. Is this work? Let's try that. Does that work? No, it doesn't work for me. Because I can't open a channel. I don't know, try that. Try that link. No, there's no videos on the new channel, Nazmanabs. I'm doing a live stream at noon. And I've already spent like 12 minutes talking about all kinds of weirdness. Does that link work, guys? Maybe I'll do that. Got it off Twitter, Kuro? Okay, well, just, we'll work it out, okay? It's a work in progress. All right, let's get into it, because, man, I really wanted to get into some news today without doing a lot of talking, but that didn't happen. Quickly. This is a really interesting video. I think you guys should watch this video. But I don't know if you need to have Rockfin to actually watch it. It's a really good video. Kim Iverson is on Rockfin. So if you have to watch this on Rockfin, it might be a good reason to sign up for Rockfin. She was on a terrorist watch list because she was an environmentalist. Anybody see this video before I posted it? Pretty interesting. I urge you to watch the video and realize what it means for the coming war on domestic terrorism for environmentalists and people interested in climate change. This was what happened after 9/11 with putting people on watch lists and having people detained when they're getting on and off airplanes and all that. That's all. Rockfin people, I'm sorry if your stream is choppy. I really am. Neo-realism. Urban Hermit. Yeah, you got it. Jay Thadcast, what's up? Ryan Gorman, what's up? Poppy Davis, what's up? Bill Gabriel. Ken Greenfield. We got a lot of people hanging out on Rockfin. Or a lot more people hanging out. Thanks, guys. Jay Thadcast says 1 in 3 Americans were on the terrorist watch list, right? Anyways, we're moving on. This, from extreme temperatures around the world, December 2020 was the first slightly cooler than average month in Nicaragua in over 2 years. So no cooler than average months for 2 years. In the Americas, other countries, territories like Cuba, Puerto Rico, Colombia, and French Guyana haven't recorded any cooler than average month since 2018. Do you want to say that's a warming trend? I'd say that's a warming trend. So the discussion, or part of the title today, well, the title today partly is because of TCR tweeting this out. How in the flying F are we going to get the 75 million individuals known as the 1% to voluntarily cut the vast majority of their emissions? Super good question. And it again leads to leads me down the road of, you have to deprogram people on some level, or disabuse people of the idea. Hold on one second, guys. Disabuse people of the idea that, the whole world just wants to be wealthy and everybody wants to be a millionaire. Right? Am I right? Am I right? That's the goal. And, the goal of capitalism, or the goal of everybody living in a capitalist society, is, we want to be rich just like all the other rich people. We want to be filthy rich and filthy famous and make a lot of money and fly in jets and all the good stuff. Have all the good stuff. We deserve it. We earned it. We deserve it. Wendy DeLeese says we cannot. A circular economy is the best we can achieve. Hold on one second, guys. My bad. Thanks for your patience. Ross Cobbin says the term reprogram has a very unpleasant ring to it. Well, reprogram, deprogram is actually, it's funny because with all the new domestic terrorism talk, they want to deprogram people from being Trump supporters. But what about deprogramming people from wanting to live in a capitalist country and be rich? I mean, that's almost a sickness in itself, right? That's probably a bigger sickness. But also included in that sickness is, being a Trump supporter and being a patriot and, wanting to live like all the other Americans and have all the things. All right, we got 12 watching on Rockfin. Well, let's look at what I want to do is point out how hard it is for even just a regular person to stop consuming so much. The 1% being 75 million. Maybe I don't know if I disconnect this. Sorry about that, guys. I don't know if I might have lost the Rockfin people. My bad. But if that's the case, I don't know. Let's see. Is the Rockfin still going? I don't know if I disconnect this. All right. Rockfin is still going. Sorry for the problems today, guys. I don't really even know what to do about this. Sorry about that, guys. I don't know if I might have lost the Rockfin people. My bad. But if that's the case, I don't know. Let's see. Is the Rockfin still going? Well, Rockfin's still going. Okay, I'm sorry for the problems today, guys. All right. Rockfin is still going. Sorry for the problems today, guys. I don't really even know what to do about this. Sorry about that, guys. I don't know if I might have lost the Rockfin people. I'm going to have to turn off my sound on Rockfin, but I'm still going. Okay. I'm going to read this article. And about Peter Kalmus. Did you guys see this article in ProPublica? If I can get it to come up. Peter Kalmus, climate scientist / activist, who I read many of his tweets, and he's, pretty vocal about climate change and where we're at and where we're going. And so I want to look at this article. It said the climate crisis is worse than you can imagine, and here's what happens if you try. If you only try and try to imagine how bad it is. A climate scientist spent years trying to get people to pay attention to the disaster ahead. His wife is exhausted. His older son thinks there's no future. And nobody but him will use the outdoor toilet he built to shrink his carbon footprint. This is from January 25th. I'm going to try to read most of this. It's a medium long read, but I'm going to try and get through it. Peter Kalmus, out of his mind, stumbled back toward the car. It was all happening, all the stuff he'd been trying to get others to see, and failing to get others to see. It was all here. The day before, when his family started their Labor Day backpacking trip along the Oak-lined dry creek bed in Romero Canyon, in the mountains east of Santa Barbara, the temperature had been 105 degrees. Now it was 110 degrees, and under his backpack, his large mammalian self, as Peter called his body, was more than just overheating. He was melting down. Everything felt wrong. His brain felt wrong. And the planet felt wrong. And everything that lived on the planet felt wrong, off kilter, in the wrong place. Nearing the trailhead, Peter's mind death spiraled. What's next summer going to bring? How hot will it be in 10 years? Yes, the data showed that the temperature would only rise per decade by a few tenths of a degree Celsius. Go ahead and slap your knee on that one. But those tenths would add up, and the extreme temperatures would rise even faster. And while Peter's big mammal body could handle 100 degrees, 110 drove him crazy. That was just not a friendly climate for a human. 110 degrees was hostile, an alien planet. Lizards fried right there on the rocks. Elsewhere, songbirds fell out of the sky. There was more human conflict, just as the researchers promised. Not outright violence, not here, not yet. But Peter's kids were pissed, and his wife was pissed, and the salience that he'd so desperately wanted others to feel, salience being the term of choice in the climate community for the gut level understanding that climate change isn't going to be a problem in the future, it is a crisis now, that salience was here. The full catastrophe was here, both in the planetary and the Zorba the Greek sense. Wife, children, house, everything, the full catastrophe. To cool down, Peter, a climate scientist who studied coral reefs, had stood in a stream for an hour like a man might stand at a morgue waiting to identify a loved one's body. Irritated by his powerlessness, massively depressed. He found no thrill in the fact that he'd been right. Sharon Kunde, Peter's wife, found no thrill in the situation either, though her body felt fine. It was just hot, okay, very hot. Her husband was decompensating. The trip sucked. I was losing it, Peter later recalled, as we sat on the front porch on a far too warm November afternoon in Altadena, California, just below the San Gabriel Mountains. Yeah, Sharon said, losing my grip. Yeah. Poor Sharon is the closest person to me, and I share everything with her. Sometimes everything is both too much and not enough. George Marshall opened his book, Don't Even Think About It, Why Our Brains Are Wired to Ignore Climate Change, with the parable of Jan Karski, a young Polish resistance fighter who in 1943 met in person with Supreme Court Justice Felix Frankfurter, who was both a Jew and widely regarded as one of the great minds of his generation. Karski briefed the justice on what he'd seen firsthand. The pillage of the Warsaw Ghetto, the Belzec death camp. Afterward, Frankfurter said, I do not believe you. The Polish ambassador, who had arranged the meeting on the recommendation of President Franklin Roosevelt, interrupted to defend Karski's account. I did not say that he is lying, Frankfurter explained. I said that I didn't believe him. It's a different thing. My mind, my heart, they are made in such a way that I cannot accept. No, no, no. Sharon, too, possessed a self-protective mind and heart. A high school English teacher and practiced Stoic from her Midwestern German Lutheran childhood, she didn't believe in saying things you were not yet prepared to act upon. We find it difficult to understand each other on this topic, Sharon, 46, said of her husband's climate fixation. Yet while Sharon was preternaturally contained, Peter was at a yard sale, whole self out in the open. At 47, he worked at NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab, studying which reefs might survive the longest as the oceans warm. He had more twinkle in his eye than one might expect for a man possessed by planetary demise. But he often held his head in his hands like a 50-pound kettlebell. Every time he heard a plane fly overhead, he muttered, "Fossil fuel noise." For years, in articles in Yes magazine and op-eds in the Los Angeles Times, in his book, Being the Change, Live Well and Spark a Climate Revolution on social media, Peter had been pleading, begging for people to pay attention to the global emergency. Is this my personal hell, he tweeted this past fall, that I have to spend my entire life desperately trying to convince everyone to not destroy the fucking earth? That is a personal hell. His pain was transfixing, a case study in a fundamental climate riddle. How do you confront the truth of climate change when the very act of letting it in risks toppling your sanity? There is too much grief, too much suffering to bear, so we intellectualize, we rationalize, and too often, without even allowing ourselves to know we're doing it, we turn away. At virtually every level, personal, political, policy, corporate, we repeat this pattern. We fail or don't even try to rise to the challenge. Yes, there are the behemoth forces of power and money reinforcing the status quo. But even those of us who firmly believe we care very often fail to translate that caring into much action. We make polite, perhaps even impassioned conversation. We say smart climate things in the boardroom or classroom or kitchen or on the campaign trail. And then there's a gap, a great nothingness and inertia. What happens if a human, or to be precise, a climate scientist, both privileged and cursed to understand the depth of the problem, lets the full catastrophe in? Once Peter, Sharon, and their 12 and 14-year-old sons set their packs down at the car on the infernal Labor Day weekend, they blasted the air conditioning, then stopped for Gatorade and flaming hot Doritos to recover from their trip. But the heat had descended not just on Peter's big mammal body, but on the millions of acres of dry cheatgrass and oak chaparral. The same afternoon, around 1 p.m., the bobcat fire started 5 miles from their house in the Los Angeles hills. Peter's climate obsession started, as many obsessions do, with the cross-wiring of exuberance and fear. In late 2005, Sharon got pregnant with their first child, and in the throes of joy and panic that accompanied impending fatherhood, Peter attended the weekly physics colloquium at Columbia University, where he was working on an astrophysics PhD. The topic that day was the energy imbalance in the planet, how more energy was coming into Earth's atmosphere from the sun than our atmosphere was radiating back out into space. Peter was rapt. He'd grown up a nerdy Catholic boy scout in suburban Chicago and had always been, as his sister Audrey Kalma said, someone who jumped into things he believed in with 3 feet. He'd met Sharon at Harvard. They'd moved to New York so she could earn a teaching degree. For a while before returning to school, Peter had made good money on Wall Street writing code. Now here he was really hearing for the first time that the planet, his son's future home, was going to roast, full stop. This was a catastrophe. A physics catastrophe. And here he was, a physicist about to have a son. He exited the lecture hall in a daze. I was kind of like, are we going to pretend this is like a normal scientific talk, he told me, recalling his thoughts. We're talking about the end of life on Earth as we know it. For the next 8 months, Peter walked around Manhattan, freaking out in my brain, he said, like one of those end is near people with the sandwich boards. He tried converting Columbia's undergraduate green groups to the cause. Did they care about the environment? Yes. Did they care about the planetary catastrophe? Well, yes, of course they did, but they were going to stick with their project of getting plastic bags out of dining halls, okay? He tried lobbying the university administrators to switch to wind power. Couldn't even get a meeting. Nothing made sense. Why was Al Gore spending a fortune to make a climate movie only to flinch at the end of an inconvenient truth and say, essentially, just buy more efficient light bulbs? Almost nobody really saw it. We are having an emergency. There was only one possible endgame here if humans didn't stop burning fossil fuels fast. Global chaos, mass violence, miserable deaths. Peter and Sharon's friends came over to meet and bless their baby Braird shortly after he was born in June 2006. All the guests went around the room offering wishes for the unborn child. When Peter's turn came, he said he hoped that his son didn't get shot at a climate-induced climate-induced barbarity, and that he did not starve. Wow. Peter and Sharon rented a house with a big avocado tree when they moved to California in 2008 for Peter's dream postdoc studying gravitational waves at Caltech. Braird was 2 and Sharon was nursing newborn Zane. Peter and Sharon both came from families with 4 kids, and they didn't want Braird to be the only child. And having a child when you want one is also immeasurably wonderful, too wonderful, in this case, to give up. They did later decide to forego a third. In Peter's first run at grassroots activism, he organized a climate protest with a friend. Only 2 people showed up. Peter joined Transition Pasadena, a community group dedicated to producing a more resilient city and for living lighter on our Earth. He also said he tried pushing to focus the group around global heating and climate breakdown. But the members, he said, wanted to talk about gardening and city council meetings, not the apocalypse. So Peter and Transition Pasadena parted ways. 4 years into climate awakening and action, Peter felt he had accomplished nearly zero. One night, frustrated with inaction and disgusted with fossil fuel use, He sat at his computer and calculated the sources of all his own emissions so he could go about reducing them. In the morning, he presented Sharon with a pie chart. This was one of those moments that both distorted and crystallized the scale problems inherent in addressing climate change. So here's what happens when, kind of normal people in the United States start trying to address their own consumption. The personal and the planetary, the insignificant and the enormous, warping and reverberating as if modulated by a wah-wah pedal. Peter himself believed that you can't fix climate change with individual virtue any more than you can fix systemic racism that way, but he also knew at some point you have to burn your ships on the beach. As Richard Rice, a climate educator and fellow at the Institute for Sustainable Cities at Hunter College, put it. You need to commit, perhaps even create drama and make real changes in your life. By far the biggest wedge of the pie chart was Peter flying to scientific meetings and conferences. Oh yes. For the family, if Peter quit flying, it meant he'd be home more to help with the kids. Sharon reserved the right to keep flying if she wanted. Win-win. Okay, there's the trade-off. Peter's second largest source of emission was food, so he started growing artichokes, eggplant, kale, and squash, plus tending fruit trees, and that was great. Then he started composting. Okay, that's great too. He also started keeping bees and raising chickens, and soon raccoons and possums discovered the chickens. And Peter began running outside in his underwear in the middle of the night when he heard the chickens scream. Baby chicks lived in the house, which the boys loved. Brayrd got stung by bees while Sharon was at a meditation retreat, and it turned out Brayrd was allergic and he went into shock. Which is totally a reason not to have bees or something like that. I don't know. Next came dumpster diving, which eventually and thankfully morphed into an arrangement with Trader Joe's to pick up the unsellable food every other Sunday night. Peter's haul, 7 or 8 boxes according to Sharon, 3 boxes according to Peter, included dozens of eggs with only one broken, flats, mostly not moldy, of strawberries, bread past its sell-by date. I'm actually pretty I have respect for Peter Kalmus going this far with his footprint reduction that he was getting. He's getting thrown out food from Trader Joe's. Pretty good. Peter did his best to put things away before he fell asleep because waking up to the mess drove Sharon nuts. But it was a lot. Low carbon living was a lot. And this is why it's going to be even more difficult to teach entitled, privileged people of the United States, all the entitled, privileged people of the United States, that their economic dreams of being a millionaire or even just being semi-wealthy are bad for the planet. They stopped using the gas dryer. They stopped shitting in the flush toilet and started practicing humanure, composting their own crap. Sharon had lived with an outhouse in Mongolia, so that was something I was used to, she said. Plus, to be honest, she liked the local, organic, anti-capitalist politics of it. Marx wrote about this in Capital, Volume 1, that one of the reasons Europeans started to use chemical fertilizers is because people started to move into the cities and off of the land, and people stopped pooping out in the countryside, so it became less fertile. The main problem for Sharon was that their bathroom was small and the composting toilet was inside. They used eucalyptus leaves to try to cover up the smell, but then little bits of leaves got all over the bathroom too. After a while, Peter moved the composting toilet outdoors. He also built an outdoor shower that Sharon found quite lovely, rustic in California. Again, because all of this is difficult doesn't mean that people shouldn't try doing this. It doesn't mean that, well, anyways, that's just too hard. Why bother? Sharon commiserated with a friend who was married to a priest. How do you have an equal marriage with a man who's trying to save the world? The priest's wife, too, found it impossible for her to have any space for herself. Sharon said, because he was called by God to minister to people. When she tried to do her own thing, it wasn't as important as his. Motherhood was hard enough. Sharon wanted to write a novel. She wanted to write poetry. She wanted to go for a run or even a walk in peace. His dreams were so much more heroic and important than I had to sort of, I don't know, she said, I had to go along with it. The most trying component, well, I mean, she also still believes in like normalcy, right? So that's a big problem. If you believe in normalcy, the normal that we all are supposed to live or aspire to, then you're going to run up against climate change pretty much. The most trying component of the low-carbon experiment for Sharon was the 1985 Mercedes that Peter converted to biodiesel. Maybe, as Sharon hate named the car, as in maybe we'll get there, maybe we won't, arrived in their lives in 2011, just as Sharon was starting an English PhD at UC Irvine and commuting 50 miles each way. Jesus Christ. That's also good for the environment. Yes, they took family summer road trips to go camping and visit friends. But on the winter trips to visit their families in the Midwest, the grease coagulated in the cold, which made maybe break down more. Some nights Sharon cried in the motel room, but when it's daytime, it all seemed better, she said. She talked about renting a car or even flying home, but never did. Still, late one night on a very cold, dark, and lonely Utah highway when Peter was under the broken-down car and Brayrd and Zane were in the back seat screaming, and Sharon was revving the engine at Peter's request, she started to wonder if she had Stockholm Syndrome. Sometimes Sharon thought of Peter as being like John the Baptist, a voice in the wilderness crying out, "Repent, repent." The problem is that we all have Stockholm Syndrome in that we love capitalism, which is killing us, right? That we are all suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. This was said with love, but also annoyance. Larissa McFarquhar explored in her book, Strangers Drowning, extreme do-gooders often provoke us. We find them ridiculous, self-righteous, sometimes even perverse or narcissistic moralists for whom McFarquhar writes, it is always wartime. Just figuring out how to raise children on the earth right now presented so many existential questions. Peter often indulged in a half-joking zombie apocalypse mentality. He wanted to teach his boys to grow crops, to defend themselves, to fix things. I do think we need to be talking about the collapse of civilization and the deaths of billions of people, he said. Sounds pretty doomy, Peter. When she was at her gloomiest, Sharon, too, felt scared to leave her sons on this planet, but she also called on her tight-lipped German upbringing to create a bubble of denialistic peace. Things you don't want to confront, just ignore it. Pretend it's not there, she said. Her ethics of care, as she called it, involved encouraging the boys to take music lessons, read books, and even meditate when she could persuade them to join her. She wanted to prepare her sons to be creative and resilient. If the planet was crumbling, they'd need rich interior lives. Did Sharon want the boys to worry? I don't know. I don't know, she said. That was the never-ending, urgent, timeless question. How much do we want our children to understand about the horrors of the world? In 2012, Peter switched fields from astrophysics to earth science because he just couldn't stop obsessing. This meant backpedaling in his career, quitting the laser interferometer gravitational wave observatory experiment, 3 founding members of which would go on to win the 2017 Nobel Prize in Physics. Still, even his new job was a strange fit. Science itself, with its cultural terror of appearing biased, was a strange fit. Peter had given up expecting emotional comfort. He'd given up on decorum. He had nightmares about being on planes. The emissions, you know, he said, it feels like the plane is flying on ground-up babies to me. Wow. Even the simplest decisions led him into deep philosophical rifts. The boys' music lessons to Peter seemed woefully, almost willfully anachronistic, a literal fiddling while Rome or Los Angeles burned. Peter kept trying to figure out ways to make his voice heard. He organized climate cafes modeled on death cafes, places for people to gather to share grief. I guess you could call Black Bear News a death cafe or a climate cafe, something like that. He started No-Fly Climate Sci, a grassroots group of academic institutions and individual scientists committed to flying less. He kept writing, posting, organizing, talking. It was not always well received. Before the pandemic, Peter stood on the sidelines of Braird's soccer games when it was 113 degrees, and I'd be telling the other parents, this is climate change. Yeah, he said. And they don't want to hear that during a soccer game, but I can't not do it. Well, how are you even playing soccer at 113 degrees? I don't even know. We were having an emergency without fainting or having heat stroke. Jesus Christ. Peter thought, we are having an emergency. Peter thought that all day, every day. Here I am with a retirement account, Peter said. Did he need a retirement account? What was the world going to be like in 2060 when he was an old man? He'd been careful with himself not to become a doomer. Too late, Peter. Doomers in his mind were selfish. They'd given up on the greater good and retreated to their own bunkers, leaving the rest of us to burn. Still, despite Peter's commitment, okay, so maybe he's not a doomer because he's trying to do stuff. But he's pretty in touch with the reality, right? So we'll call Peter Kalmus a realist. Despite Peter's commitment to keep working toward a global change, Sharon found Peter's florid negativity distasteful at times. There's almost like a pornographic fascination with, I'm going to imagine just how bad everything is going to be, she said. Right, exactly. Jay Thadcast, nobody appreciates reality when it interferes with life enjoyment, right? Because you want to escape reality as much as possible, and humans are really, really good, have become very good at that. Sharon staged minor rebellions to maintain a sense of self, little stuff like using lots of hot water when she did the dishes, and bigger stuff like she stopped talking sometimes. Braird and Zane, too, each absorbed and reacted to Peter's passionate cri de coeur in their own ways. Zane, the younger one, started doing his own regular Greta Thunberg-style climate strikes in front of City Hall. Braird, the older, meanwhile, was entering his teens, differentiating and waxing nihilistic. When asked what he wanted to do with his future, Braird said, "What future?" When asked what he thought about climate change, he sunk a dagger into his father's heart like only a child can. Braird said, I don't really think about it. On the Tuesday evening after Labor Day, 2 days after the family returned from their infernal backpacking, Peter, still recovering from heat exhaustion, stood at the sink doing dishes. Braird played little League of Legends on his bed. Sharon sat meditating as she did from 7 to 8 p.m. each night. Then the emergency alerts blew up their phones. An evacuation warning, the Bobcat fire. The day before, in the ongoing horrible heat, they'd taped their windows shut against the smoke, but they hadn't packed go bags. They never really believed their house would burn. The state was a climate war zone. Military helicopters had rescued 200 people trapped in a Sierra Lake by the Creek Fire, which had thrown up a plume of flames 50,000 feet. Cal Fire was predicting the Bobcat fire would not be contained for 6 weeks. Sharon finished meditating. Then she started photographing all their stuff, including the insides of the closets and drawers, because that's what insurance adjusters tell you to do. Document your property so you can make a stronger claim. Peter snapped. Yes, Poppy Davis, he does live close to me. I live in Altadena. He lives in Altadena, so he's very close to me. It's a small city, very small city. Peter snapped. He didn't care about the pictures or the insurance. He just wanted to let the house... He works at JPL, and JPL is right down the street. He just wanted to let the house incinerate. He felt done pretending that anything was normal, and he decided that now would be a good time to tell Sharon that he'd felt frustrated and gaslit by her all these years. Wow. We never even talk about climate change. Do you even care about climate change, he said. This did not go well, of course. There it was, the gap. Let me see. She threw a laundry basket. You have got to be fucking kidding me, she shouted. Our entire lives are about climate change. There it was, that gap we build around knowing and integrating to protect our own lives and minds. Yet after the fight, after finally saying aloud what he'd been thinking for almost 15 years, Peter felt better. Not because anything was different. Nothing was different. The situation remained unshakably cosmically wrong. The only reason to care about insurance, books, paintings, the house, was if you believe that there would be a stable planet on which to enjoy those things in 20 or 40 or 80 years. If you believe there'd be a planet with seasons where you can grow food and have water and you can go outside without dying from heat stroke, Peter said, I don't have that anymore, that sense of stability. But he also knew deep down that Sharon could not and should not give that up. She was a more anxious person than he was. They both knew that. For me to stay sane, there's only so much I can take, Sharon said. Earlier on the night of their big fight, they'd watched The Handmaid's Tale, as they did each Tuesday. Sharon often thought about the main character, June. You have to moderate how you think. You have to think in little chunks so you can endure just like June does, she told me. You have to make sacrifices so you can survive. If you can survive to fight another day, then maybe the right opportunity will present itself. You can't kill yourself. Well, you can, but that's not the option I want to take. Maybe is now gone. Peter drives an electric car. The composting toilet remains outside, though Peter admits the other 3 family members are not interested in contributing at all. Peter's current project is making climate ads. Is this how he can tell the story of what is happening to the world in a way that will make people not just hear and retreat, but act? He thinks about this all the time. How do you describe an intolerable problem in a way that listeners, even you, dear reader, will truly let in? All through October and November, the Bobcat fire continued to burn. It grew to 115,000 acres. Its 300-foot-high flames licked up against Mount Wilson Observatory, where scientists first proved the existence of a universe outside the Milky Way. The fire continued to burn well into December, when UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres urged with middling effect that the nations of the world to declare a climate emergency. So far, 38 have done so. The United States is not one of them. In January, a team of 19 climate scientists published a paper understanding the challenges of avoiding a ghastly future. That said, the scale of the threats to the biosphere and all its life forms, including humanity, is in fact so great that it is difficult to grasp for even well-informed experts. The language of the sentence could not be more dire. It makes the mind go numb. So how, with our limited human minds, do we attend enough to make real progress? How do we not flinch and look away? The truth of what is happening shakes the foundations of our sense of distorting gravity, bending our priorities and warping our whole lives. The overt denialists are easy villains, the monsters who look like monsters, but the rest of us, much of the time, wear pretty green masks over our self-interest and denial. Wow, great sentence. And then go about our days. Woo! That is a great sentence. Wear pretty green masks over our self-interest and denial. Then each morning we wake up to a new headline like "The planet is dying faster than we thought." While I was trying and failing to process it all, Peter called to make sure I understood the importance of the comments he'd made. He's no longer embarrassed to tell people he would die to keep the planet from overheating. He's left behind the solace of denial. He's well aware of the cost. What a luxury to feel that the ground we walk on and this planet that is rotating around the sun is in some sense okay. All right. Great article on Peter Kalmus. And, I hope you guys were okay with me reading the whole thing. It was a long read. But I knew it was going to be going into it. Yes, I thought it was a great article. Jazz Farm. Absolutely. I think I lost my feed on Rockfin. I'm sorry, guys. My apologies. Or maybe I didn't. Maybe it's still going. Oh, no, I just got logged out or something. Anyways, if y'all are still watching on Rockfin, thank you for being here. I think it's still going. Guys, I'm gonna sign out. Thank you all for hanging out with me on the chats every day on this live stream. I've got 5 minutes to jump over to neo-realism. I'm gonna put a link after this stream is ended. I'm gonna put the link. Hopefully it'll work in the chats here. The link to the channel, or if you can, just go to my Twitter. I think you can just look at my Twitter feed, guys, without even signing in. If you don't have a Twitter account, just go to Twitter here at Black Bear News 1, and you can go find the link to my channel. And I'll be there in a couple of minutes, okay? We're talking politics and current affairs on neo-realism, okay? At noon. Until next time, guys, peace.